If you're like millions of us, you've probably felt a pit in your stomach for the last few months when thinking about late night. It's felt like something is fundamentally broken. The headline you read, the one that screams heartbreaking news about Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart, isn't about a single new tragedy that happened today. It's about something so much bigger, a story that has been unfolding in what feels like slow motion, and it just got a devastating new update. The heartbreaking news isn't an event, it's a realization. It's the confirmation of our worst fears, that the cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert wasn't just a business decision. And now, thanks to new interviews and the defiant actions of his oldest friend, Jon Stewart, we're finally seeing the full ugly picture. This isn't just a story about TV ratings. This is a story about friendship, loyalty, and what happens when you speak truth to power, and power decides to cut your mic. The shock we all felt. Let's go back to this past July. The news dropped like a bomb. CBS was canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Wait, what? It made no sense. This wasn't a show struggling to find an audience. This was the #1 rated show in late night. It was a cultural institution, the place we tuned in to make sense of the chaos. And Stephen Colbert, he wasn't retiring. He was at the top of his game. The network's official line was cold, corporate, and felt hollow to anyone who was paying attention. It was, they said, a purely financial decision. Financial? The #1 show. None of us bought it. It felt wrong. It felt personal. It felt like a betrayal. For months, Colbert himself has been largely quiet, processing the end of his show, which is set to air its final episode in May 2026. But now, he's finally opening up. In a raw, candid new interview with GQ, Stephen has put words to what we all felt. He admitted the decision was so surprising and so shocking. He didn't see it coming. He and the network had a great relationship, which is what made the news so stunning. And then he delivered the line that chills the bone. I think we're the first #1 show to ever get canceled. Read that again, the first, ever. This single quote from Colbert is the heartbreaking news update we've been waiting for. It's the validation that our confusion and anger were justified. This wasn't normal. This was an execution. And that begs the question, why? The betrayal, what really happened? This is where the story turns from heartbreaking to infuriating. To understand what happened to Stephen, you have to look at what happened just 3 days before his show was axed. Here's the timeline. The deal, CBS parent company, Paramount, was in the final stages of a massive merger with Skydance. This merger required approval from the Trump administration. The settlement, just as this merger was on the line, Paramount made a shocking move. They settled a defamation lawsuit with Donald Trump for a staggering $16 million over a 60-minute segment. They didn't apologize, but they cut the check. The monologue, Stephen Colbert, an employee of CBS, watched his parent company do this. And he did what he always does. He went on his show and spoke the truth. He looked straight into the camera and called the $16 million settlement what it looked like, a big fat bribe. He didn't just bite the hand that fed him, he savaged it, for telling the truth. 3 days later, his #1 rated show was canceled, for financial reasons. This is the betrayal. This is the shocking update. It's the devastating context that paints Colbert as a casualty of corporate fear. He was, by all accounts, fired for his courage. He was fired for doing the one thing we loved him for, being brave. And as the entire industry reeled, one man refused to stay silent. The loyalty. Jon Stewart goes to war. Enter Jon Stewart. Jon and Stephen aren't just colleagues. They aren't just Daily Show alumni. They are brothers. Their friendship was forged in the trenches of late-night comedy for decades. And Jon Stewart was not about to let his friend be erased by a corporate press release. While other hosts offered quiet support, Jon went public. On his own show, The Daily Show, also on a Paramount-owned network, he unleashed one of the most blistering, righteous, and furious monologues of his career. He called the network's financial excuse cowardice. He accused Paramount of fear and pre-compliance, of bending the knee to political pressure. He looked down the barrel of the camera and essentially dared his own bosses to fire him too. He told them, live on air, to sack up. It was a stunning, breathtaking display of loyalty. It was a friend standing in the fire for his friend. Stewart was using his platform to say everything Colbert probably couldn't. He was confirming what we all suspected. This was a political hit, plain and simple. This is the emotional core of the story. In a world of fake Hollywood friendships, this was real. This was Jon Stewart, the man who returned to The Daily Show to fight for the soul of the country, now fighting for the soul of his friend. The final, ironic twist. And that brings us to the very latest news, the final bitter twist in this saga. Just days ago, as Colbert's gut-wrenching GQ interview was making headlines, what did Paramount do? They renewed Jon Stewart's contract. The man who called them cowards, the man who publicly shamed them for firing their #1 star, the man who continues to be the biggest thorn in their side, he's staying. His contract is extended through 2026. The irony is almost too much to bear. The network that was apparently terrified of Stephen Colbert's honesty is seemingly more terrified of the public fallout from firing Jon Stewart. So now, we are left with this heartbreaking landscape. Stephen Colbert, the king of late night, is forced to ride out his final months, a #1 host who has been told he's not wanted. And Jon Stewart, his greatest defender, remains. He outlasted his friend, not through competition, but through a defiant act of loyalty. He is now the last man standing, a king in his own right, left to hold the line on a network he clearly despises. This is the shocking update. The heartbreaking news is that our worst fears were true. The world of late night has been forever changed, not by ratings, but by politics and fear. A giant was slain, but his friend is still here, and he's making damn sure none of us ever forget why.